This is Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom, words on leadership, goal setting, productivity, and a whole lot more. I trust that today this will be like a vitamin and supplement for your mind and heart. And wherever you receive podcasts from, would you please subscribe to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom, pass the word along to your friends and neighbors, and if you could leave a rating or a review, especially those of you who listen via iTunes, it would be greatly appreciated. Today I want to talk about, as a leader, are you listening to the right voices? Now, there are a couple of key words in that previous sentence: listening and the right or correct voices. If you want to become a better leader, and I am working under the assumption that you do, we need to stop talking some and start listening. Being a leader should never be seen as a license to increase the volume of rhetoric. We live in a day that gives great platform to loud, harsh, critical, mean, hysterical voices. If there was ever a time to tone rhetoric down, it would be today. And just because you're a leader does not mean that someone somewhere has handed you a license to just talk incessantly. Rather astute leaders know there's far more to be gained by surrendering the conversation, not hogging the floor, and not dominating every conversation. Because in this age of instant communication, it seems that everyone seems to be in a mad rush or a mad dash to say something, and basically what they want to say, what is on their mind. And unfortunately, many people who are speaking loudest have very little evidently in their minds or on their minds. The leaders oftentimes, sometimes fail to realize the extreme value that can be gleaned from the minds and thoughts of others. Show me a leader who doesn't recognize the value of listening to others, and I'll show you someone who is a train wreck waiting to happen. While some may be impressed with how well you speak, the right people will be impressed with how well you listen. Great leaders are great listeners. This was not a lesson that came to me early or naturally. I am one of those folks who love to talk. I'm probably putting a preacher hat on here and preaching to myself. You know the old saying, we were given 2 ears and 1 mouth, probably as a ratio of what we should be doing. In essence, we should more than likely be listening twice as much as we talk. I've never learned much from talking, but I have learned lots of things from listening. I told someone one time who was sort of under the impression that they knew it all, that I can go into the foyer of a church and have a conversation with a 4-year-old. That's back before we had to socially distance. I could have a conversation with a 4-year-old, and if I really listened, I could learn something that I didn't know. You see, before you can listen, before you're able to listen, it's not really the problem of your ears, it's a heart problem. You have to humble yourself. You have to understand that I am a student even if I'm the leader. And not all great ideas are going to percolate out of me. Matter of fact, the most original ideas I ever had came from someone else. Think about it. I have to work on it. I have to continually, when I'm on the telephone, I have a little note that I write that says, listen, don't interrupt. Listen and learn. And I am a recovering talkaholic, and I'm trying to become an empathetic listener because many a person would rather you hear their story than grant their request. The people you will connect with are the people you listen to. For by listening to them, they feel that you value them, and everyone has a story, and everyone wants to be heard. There's an old saying that says, let a fool hold his tongue, and he will pass for a sage. If you think about it, perhaps the wisest person in any meeting is the one who says not the most, but maybe the least amount. I'm trying to coach myself in that when I'm in meetings, because I have my lifetime loved to interject myself into every conversation, and I'm not always effective at it, but I'm trying, desperately trying, to change that and to listen. And you really do get connected with people. The most basic of all human needs is the need to understand and to be understood. And the best way to understand people is to listen to them. Oftentimes, some of the people who we are really struggling with right now, ask yourself this question. Have I really taken ample time to listen to them, to hear their story, or do I jump to preconceived conceptions of them that I have? What happened if I listened not only in a neutral attitude, but an attitude of, I know that we're not always getting along, I know that we don't always see eye to eye, but I'm going to listen to you in order to better understand who you are, where you come from, what your dreams and aspiration. These are marvelous skill sets for any leader to learn. Effective listeners also remember that words really have no meaning. It's people that have meaning. We're not just trying to understand the meaning of their words. We're trying to understand what is the meaning of this person. How do they order their world? You see, we need to say, how are they different? What are their experiences colored them and their ways of reacting different? It is only then when we seek to really listen to understand someone that we can become an effective leader. You know what the definition of a bore is. That is a person who talks when you wish they would listen. That's a bore. When someone talks, and we've all been to parties, we've all been to meetings where one person, when I'm meeting with a governing board and they are interviewing someone, I say to them, let's make sure that everyone has an ample opportunity to ask a question, because if it's just one or two people dominating the conversation, it just strikes people in the negative. And listening isn't a passive thing. It's very active. As a matter of fact, M. Scott Peck said you can't truly listen to anyone and do anything else at the same time. Meaning if my spouse is talking to me, I can't be reading a book or watching television or writing out a to-do list. I have to, listening is something you really, truly have to focus on. And a lot of our inability to communicate adequately comes from our failure that we haven't really listened effectively so that we know what the questions are and what people are asking. So I have been a public speaker my entire adult life. I love to talk. And if speaking is silver, listening is gold. We have to be able to develop listening skills. And oftentimes my problem, because our weaknesses oftentimes are overextensions of our strengths, and because I like to talk, my weakness can be the fact that I talk too much. Say things too much with or without information. So I've spent an inordinate amount of time, but saying as a leader, listening is crucial. And then listening to the right voice. There are lots of voices that you'll need to consider. There are lots of voices that are clamoring for you to listen to them. Let's look at about 6 voices, maybe a few more, that you really need to listen to. Always listen to the voice of truth. It won't always come through another person, but you have to, as you're listening and discerning and figuring out where to go, what to do, always make sure you listen to the voice of truth. If something sounds too good to be true, it more than likely is. If something is being said and you're listening that causes you to compromise and forgo your values, listen to the voice of truth. Listen to everyone, respect everyone, but you're not going to let them drown out the voice of truth. Second is like that, and that's the voice of reason. Oftentimes when someone calls to tell me their situation and what should they do or how should they do it, here's what they've decided to do, and I listen to their explanation of the situation and the problem, the way that they discern it should be handled, here's what I say to them. Let's take a step back and remember always our audience. And when we're problem solving, our audience is not only to do the truth and the right thing and the best with the information that we have at the moment. The fact of the matter is, we want to say, how will a reasonable person receive this? Oftentimes, if you try to construct something for the unreasonable person will never be happy, and the unreasonable person will never be satisfied. So once you play through the scenario, you work your way through it, I ask the person, would a reasonable person say, even a reasonable person who may disagree with your decision, but at least they now understand, here's the data that went into it, here's the rationale, here's why I did what I did. And they can say, I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's reasonable. Did you take reasonable precaution? Did you put in reasonable safety measures? Did you follow the best practices that a reasonable person? Now, even then, there are things that we can't always foresee ahead of time, but try to answer the question in your mind as you're listening as a leader trying to seek direction. What would a reasonable person do? The third one's sort of counterintuitive. The third voice that I'm going to suggest you should listen to is the critic. We have a tendency, most of us are very sensitive, very thin-skinned. We don't like being evaluated. We don't like being criticized. It's natural. I don't like it any more than you do. But again, just as I said I can learn from a 4-year-old, I can learn from my critic. I may not like the harsh demeanor with which they delivered the message, but I always try to look for the fact, is there a kernel of truth in what they're saying? Or is there something they see, they've brought to my attention that I was blind to, or I didn't see, or they brought a needed perspective? Then I move on. Obviously, some folks just have a spirit of criticism, and they're always going to be criticizing. The fourth voice that I would listen to is what we would call the stakeholders. That could be the people who are a part of your family, if it's your family, the people who are part of your business, the people that your business serves. Oftentimes we just talk amongst ourselves, talks amongst the leaders, talk amongst the employees, or the volunteers at a not-for-profit. What about the people we are actually saying that we're serving? Do we listen to their voice? Have we surveyed them? Have we asked them how we're doing, how we can do better? Is there something we're not providing? Is there some way that we can do something differently? Don't forget the people you're serving. Someone needs to listen to their voice. The fifth one that I would say that you need to listen to are those who are outside of your organization, a coach, a mentor, a friend. A lot of times we can close the loop in an organization to all that we listen to and all that we talk to is ourselves. And that one thing severely limits at times the new information and insights that may be coming into our organization. Find an outside voice. Find a friend, a confidant, a mentor, a coach. Just find someone who's not even in your industry, not in your normal flow of where you seek information from, and just ask them what they think and listen to their voice. It'll be invaluable as a leader. I'm going to give you one last one, and that's the internal voice. Some people call it gut, some people call it intuition. Now, the problem here is you can't rely on it 100%. You have to listen to facts. You have to listen to the ideas. You have to follow the data. I get all of that. But I do now get a little bit nervous if I'm in the throes of making a decision and at my gut level, I'm not comfortable with it. It doesn't mean that I'm necessarily going to stop everything, but I do give myself a pause and schedule some time to try to reflect on or discover, why am I feeling this way? If you have those feelings, I don't say that you lead 100% on feelings, but oftentimes they have helped me to realize there was just something there that I needed to examine a little more closely and make sure that I wasn't missing something. So those are all areas of or folks that you need to listen to, because make sure you're not only listening, but you're listening to the right voices. You've been listening to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom, words on leadership, goal setting, productivity, and a whole lot more. I trust today this was like a vitamin or a supplement for your mind and heart. And wherever you receive podcasts from, would you please subscribe to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom, leave a rating and a brief written review. Remember, my leadership friend, you are doing better than you think you are. You really are. And until next time, this is Dr. Ron saying, have a great and blessed day.